very good evening. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines this evening. First up, it's bye-bye Trudeau as Canada's most unpopular Prime Minister sees the writing on the wall. Reports suggest he may quit ahead of the Labour caucus meeting on Wednesday. All eyes on who will be Trudeau's successor and will this mend India-Canada ties? Days after issuing a note verbal for Sheikh Hasina's extradition, Bangladesh today issued a second arrest warrant for the former Prime Minister. India Global decodes what are New Delhi's options as pressure mounts for over Hasina's future. India weighs in on escalating tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan over Islamabad's airstrikes. New Delhi slams Pakistan's air raids that killed over 46 women and children. Elon Musk's call for Starmer's resignation over the UK's worst paedophilia scandal creates a political upheaval. Calls for probe over Pakistani rape gangs grow louder even as Starmer's ratings plummet. Will Musk now alter Europe's political landscape? A fortnight before Donald Trump takes over, huge breakthrough in the Israel-Hamas war with the terror organization's announcement to free 34 hostages. Will this be the beginning of return of peace in the region? Our big story today on India Global. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to announce as early as tomorrow that he will resign as the Liberal Party leader. The Globe and Mail reported on Sunday, citing three sources. While it's unclear when Trudeau will announce his plans to leave, but they said that they expect it will happen before a key national caucus meeting that is scheduled for Wednesday. The Canadian Prime Minister's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment outside regular business hours. It remains unclear whether Trudeau will leave immediately or stay on as Prime Minister until a new leader is selected. Trudeau has been under pressure from elected lawmakers in his party to quit for months. And it's increased further when Freeland, his Finance Minister, stepped down on the 16th of December, saying she and the Prime Minister were at odds on policy. Liberal lawmakers are scheduled to hold a caucus meeting over the next 48 hours, and Trudeau's resignation would trigger a race for the party leadership, with the winner becoming Prime Minister. Take a look at this report that tells the story in greater detail.
In a stunning turn of events, embattled Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is reportedly set to announce his resignation as the leader of the Liberal Party. This announcement is expected before the crucial Liberal caucus meeting Wednesday, with some even claiming that Trudeau could step down as early as Monday. The development comes amid a growing caucus revolt and plummeting public opinion that sees Trudeau's party on the brink of being swept away by Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. Trudeau's leadership, once seen as a beacon of progressive change, now faces intense pressure. Media reports reveal that Trudeau is aware that he can't delay his decision much longer. His struggle to maintain control is underscored by mounting calls from MPs, particularly in Quebec, Ontario, and the Atlantic provinces, who have signalled their lack of support. These regions, responsible for the bulk of the Liberal caucus, now represent Trudeau's biggest challenge. While Trudeau's inner circle is reportedly debating the logistics of his exit, questions linger about whether he will step down immediately or stay on as the Prime Minister until a leadership contest is held. The prospect of prolonged leadership race, which could stretch over months, poses its own set of constitutional and political hurdles, including the looming March 28 vote on government supply. It is not only Trudeau's own lawmakers. According to a recent poll by Ipsos, 73% of Canadians think that he should resign as the leader of the Liberal Party, including 43% Liberal voters. Meanwhile, names like Chrystia Freeland, Melanie Joly, and even former BC Premier Christy Clark have been floated as potential leaders who could revive the party's fortunes. As Trudeau prepares to make a final decision, Canada's political landscape is on the cusp of a major shift, one that could reshape the future of the Liberal Party and the nation's leadership. Bureau Report, Arjun Samar Mahindran, NDTV.
All right, let's now take a deep dive into the big questions that we are asking in terms of what happens when Trudeau exits. And that's exactly what we'll be putting out to our guests as well. But first up, was vote bank politics Trudeau's undoing? That's the biggest question that we are asking. Remember, he really bowed to the Khalistani vote bank, 2% in Canadian population, but matters more because it was a vote en bloc. Second point, who will be Canada's next Prime Minister? Who's actually going to replace Trudeau given the uncertainty? Because remember, whoever is going to be the next Prime Minister will be leading the Liberal Party into the next election where they are headed for a massive defeat, or at least that's what it looks like. And the third key question we are asking is, when actually will those elections actually take place? October is the time by when it has to take place, but could it be sooner than that? And the fourth question that we are asking is that could this be a reset as far as the India-Canadian ties is concerned? Remember, it was under Justin Trudeau's leadership that the Indian-Canadian relationship really nosedived because of those comments that he made, those unverified claims that he made, which still are made up because there are no proofs right now. And that's exactly what I'll be asking the panelists joining me this evening. Let's get in Dean Baxendale, who's international columnist for the Sunday Guardian. Professor Swaran Singh joins me. And we also have Deepak Vora, former diplomat as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time. And let me start with the voice from Canada first. Mr. Dean, let me start with you. As things stand right now, there is a great amount of uncertainty in Canadian politics. It's not just about when will he resign, it's now about who is going to replace Justin Trudeau. How soon do you think this uncertainty in Canadian politics could actually die down?
Well, it couldn't happen.
You're on mute, sir.
Quick enough.
You're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can hear them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it couldn't happen fast enough at this particular point in time. Obviously, geopolitical elements, the Trump administration threatening 25% tariffs on the Canadian industry has obviously set Ottawa in turmoil. Justin Trudeau has faced a number of scandals, including the Hague Commissions and the Foreign Interference Commission, allowing China and other countries to interfere in Canadian politics through diaspora vote bank politics, as you have suggested. This creates a dynamic that works for specific groups, but not for Canada as a whole. It's going to have a leadership vacuum, which I think will be filled very quickly by a number of the contenders that you already mentioned. But as I say, this could not happen soon enough for Canada, and allows for a reset with the Canada-India relationships. So I think this is a significant moment in time. It provides also, I believe, he will continue on as Prime Minister in the short run, have a leadership race, and then be able to go to the polls later on this year.
And let me take that first question to Professor Swaran Singh as well, which is that, was vote bank politics Trudeau's undoing?
Indeed, I fully agree that definitely as the internal crisis increased, from debts rising, inflation going up, immigrants coming in without infrastructure, healthcare, housing being taken care of, etc., he moved on to what his own Deputy Prime Minister said, costly political gimmicks, which of course is the main issue. And of course, this was exasperated by the fact that first he had 4 to 5 years of enormous tensions with China, and now, of course, 1.5 year plus with India, and potentially with United States. So in that sense, this kind of situation where he was not able to lead in the same charismatic manner in which he was leading in the first 5 years or so, where he was seen as an iconic, progressive leader of the liberal world from Canada. And gradually, this is a regression that has seen about 7-8 years, and now every next year it became more difficult.
Yes.
Only thing is that until about yesterday, for example, last 3 weeks, he was hardly visible, and whenever people could see him, they were naming names, shouting at him, and so on. He was not addressing any media and
In
so
fact,
on.
I had done this story
looks-
last week, sir, where he was at a ski resort and holidaying, where he was actually booed by his electorate, which was shocking for a sitting prime minister.
It only looks like that the Wednesday caucus call is going to bring some certainty in terms of his going, in terms of time frame when he's going and so on. So compared to last year of confusion, we will see some relative clarity in coming weeks.
Okay. Before I come to the India-Canada relationship, and I'm going to ask all the three panelists to weigh in on that. But before that, Mr. Vora, let me ask you this. How soon do you see elections taking place in October? Because he has time till October. But do you see that happening sooner than that in Canada?
First of all, thank you very much, ma'am. Always a pleasure, an honor, and a delight to be on your channel, to learn from you. Millions of people watch. May I wish all of you a happy new year, even though it's a little belated, to our friend from Canada, and to Professor Swaran Singh, whose knowledge is much greater than mine. He's a one-man army.
Sure.
When he's there. Nevertheless, may I very quickly put it to you that the clown of Canada, or Dustbin Trudeau as we call him, ma'am, he was at one point of time young chap, good looking, charming, etc., but then he began to believe in his own invincibility. Hubris was his undoing, that I can bluff and BS my way through every situation. Let me put it to you very clearly. I've been in diplomacy 51 years and counting. I've served in that region, and I've served as ambassador in 6 countries. Let me put it to you like this, ma'am. I've seen this before. What is hurting the Canadians internally is inflation, unemployment, rising housing prices, and one after another scandal involving this character. Externally, I have not known of any world leader of a middle power like Canada. It's not a great military power. Let's be clear on that. Spoil his relationship with the world's 4 greatest powers.
Yes.
He mocked Trump. You remember in 2019 in London, Donald Trump then called him two-faced.
Yeah.
He's messed up his relationship with Putin for no reason. You didn't have to go out and abuse Putin. You are not a member of the group that is trying to, you're not fighting, NATO is not fighting Vladimir Putin. You didn't have to go abuse him.
Yes.
Third, China, I remember, ma'am, at the Bali G20 summit, we were there. The leader of China publicly berated Trudeau for leaking confidential details of a confidential conversation. And then the 4th great power that he has offended is India. Who does this guy think he's lost his marbles? I think he should do Canada a favor. He should not quit today. He should not quit tomorrow. He should quit yesterday, because he's the most reviled international leader. Please take a look at that list of popular world leaders, ma'am. It's published by Morning Consult, that American firm. Justin Trudeau is so far down that they had to drill a hole to find what his position was. And Narendra Modi, by the way, with 80% rating, has been for 2 years.
That's a very important point you made, Mr. Vora. And let me now come in on the aspect of the India-Canada relationship. The reason why this leadership change or the vacuum that exists right now matters so much to New Delhi. And Dean, let me start with you there, which is that whoever do you think replaces or is the successor of Justin Trudeau, we assume or we hope that he would understand the gravity of mistakes that have been made by Justin Trudeau's administration, the kind of wild accusations and allegations he made, and how the entire India-Canada relationship then went into a toss. Do you expect his successor to mend some of this and pick up the pieces?
I think that right now our clear focus will be on the U.S. situation first and foremost. I think that the relationship being repaired with India is going to be left to the next government. And I think that is where we can see opportunities with these 2 great nations that have so much in common. And we have one of the world's largest diaspora Indian populations in the world, I think the largest in a democracy. And it's important that our relationship with India from an economic perspective, both from the national security aspect for India as well as Canada, is forged and is built on mutual respect, admiration, and an understanding that we can work together as democracies. So I think this is important, and I think it will get reset. But right now we have to focus on the U.S. Tariffs, which are based on, in fact, the lack of leadership on the fentanyl crisis and what we call the ecosystem inside Canada, where we've allowed the Chinese Communist Party to use Canada as a vassal state on many aspects of the Belt and Road Initiative.
Important point you made. Let me get in, Professor Singh, on that, which is the India-Canada relationship under Justin Trudeau's successor, whoever that could be. One is the interim successor for the next couple of months who will lead the party into the election, and then, of course, the Prime Minister of the next full-fledged elected government. How do you see the relationship now that Justin Trudeau is on his way out, Professor Singh?
I think, first of all, interim Prime Minister, without being the leader of the party, will limit the kind of aura or influence that the interim Prime Minister will have. And we understand that the interim Prime Minister automatically goes out of any contestation for becoming the next party leader. Next party leader, in case Liberal Party comes to power, will be the Prime Minister, which is not likely. The earlier the elections, the better for Canada, therefore, so that they can bring in a Prime Minister, in this case, obviously from Conservative Party, because of the backlash against the Liberals rather than in favor of Conservatives. So in case of India, I think relationship has to be segregated. Economic relationship is not a big one, but continues to thrive. For example, Canada National Pensions Fund, even in November, they were visiting India, they were investing in India. So
Yes.
that has not changed much. The social fabric has been cast asunder in that sense. Students have faced difficulties.
Yes.
People of Indian origins, there are uncertain. And some of the vociferous elements will not disappear even if the Conservatives come to power. So it is the social and political component of relationship which has been really damaged, and that will take time. It's not going to be sort of resolved very quickly. And that is partly also that whosoever comes to power will not see that as number one priority. Number one priority, obviously, is United States, where 75% of Canada's trade goes.
That goes without saying,
that
sir.
will be the focus.
And I think, the fact that the way Donald Trump, president-elect, was absolutely pretty much trolling Justin Trudeau, calling him the 51st governor, and again mentioning that, it sort of indicated that, how he saw Justin Trudeau's leadership, and that undermined his global stature and also precipitated some of what we are saying. So you're right about the fact that mending or fixing the relationship under Donald Trump would be the number one priority of whoever would be the next Canadian Prime Minister, interim or full-fledged elected. But the fact is that India is also a very important economy, important market, and an important relationship. And to that extent, Mr. Bora, let me ask you this. How do you see that now undergoing a change now that Justin Trudeau is going to make way for somebody more sensible, somebody who will, of course, be driven not by petty interests, but by larger national goals?
The first point about priorities for the new Canadian regime, and I've seen this in several regime changes, not regime change in the American sense, but changes of leadership, where the leader becomes a liability for his country. Ma'am, as far as India is concerned, if I were to list Canada's top 10 priorities in terms of other countries, United States would be one, then Europe, with whom also he has messed up his relationship, then China, then Russia, then whatever. So we are not right there on top, and we accept that. As far as we are concerned, as far as India is concerned, look, there's a little Justin fellow running around, and his country is great. They are rich. They're putting money here because they want to make money. But he's a middling power. We don't really care much about him. And Prime Minister made it very clear at the last G20 in Brazil when he brushed aside this guy who wanted to talk to him. So while we would like good relationship with him, and India wants it with everybody, it's on the basis of mutual respect. And if that respect is missing and you make allegations, we'll tell our friends and allies that you are doing this. He had a foreign minister, ma'am, this is just a little anecdote. When I was in New York, they told me laughingly in the UN headquarters that no waiter was willing to serve this for his foreign minister whenever she came for breakfast, because she would say, sit down, I want to brief you about what terrible fellows the Indians are. I mean, come on, have a heart. You don't do this kind of thing. Briefing every taxi driver, metro passenger about what terrible fellows Indians are, and calling world leaders and saying, bad boys, the Indians. You don't do this kind of thing. Ma'am, we are the children of Chanakya. We understand diplomacy better than anybody else in the world. So if anybody thinks that relationship is going to mend with whoever is Trudeau's successor, no, it's not. It takes years to build a relationship, and it takes one clown to destroy it within a few months.
Absolutely, you're right about that. And I think the next couple of months will be all about waiting and watching to see how things unravel, reshape, and probably then go about mending as far as Ottawa is concerned. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Global on an issue that really matters on all aspects of a relationship. And the bottom line, viewers, as far as this issue is concerned, is that Justin Trudeau had everything going for him. But vote bank politics cannot be a substitute for policy action and reform. And as his ratings plummeted due to high costs, rising unemployment, falling per capita GDP, Justin Trudeau turned to a fake Khalistani murder plot to divert attention of his people. But with 7 out of 10 Canadians unhappy with Trudeau's handling of the post-COVID Canadian economy, the made-up Nijjar plot did little to prop his ratings. One hopes Trudeau's successor will acknowledge the failings of his administration, pick up the pieces and move ahead. Welcome back. This is India Global. We now turn our attention to the other big story that we are tracking. Setting the stage for a ceasefire deal to the long-drawn Israel-Hamas war, the terror organization has said it is ready to release 34 hostages. There is still no information who these hostages are and whether they are alive or dead. Now, Hamas announced the release will be part of the first phase of a prisoner exchange. Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu's office has said Hamas is yet to provide details about the 34 hostages. But the larger question and the point really here is that Hamas has set a condition for this release, which is that any ceasefire deal hinges on Israel agreeing to a permanent halt in fighting and withdrawal from Gaza, something that may be a deal breaker for the Israeli Prime Minister. With nearly 100 hostages in Hamas's captivity, ceasefire talks between the two sides continue to take place in Qatar. Biden administration is hopeful of a breakthrough before President-elect Donald Trump takes office on the 20th of January. Remains to be seen whether Hamas's conditions for release of hostages will be acceptable to the Israeli political establishment or not. All right, on to information, more news coming in from Ukraine, where the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to press for stronger air defense systems at a key meeting with international allies this week in Germany. The talks will take place at the Ramstein Air Base on Thursday, where dozens of countries will gather to discuss Ukraine's defense needs. Zelensky is likely to make a case for strengthening Ukraine's air defense system, and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will also be attending the meeting. The meet was originally scheduled for October with President Joe Biden, but was postponed due to the Hurricane Milton. And with a fortnight to go for Trump administration, Biden administration is rushing to send more military aid to Ukraine, even as President-elect Trump has claimed that he could end the war in a single day. All right, with that, we're slipping into a very short break. We come back on the other side with Bangladesh and what to make of the fresh arrest warrant that has been issued against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Stay with us. We come back with that story and lots more. Welcome back. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie Dwivedi. Turning our attention now to the big story right now, which is a court in Bangladesh has issued a second arrest warrant for former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on charges of enforced disappearance during her rule, the chief prosecutor said. Dhaka has already issued an arrest warrant for Sheikh Hasina on charges of crimes against humanity in October last year. And as per the chief prosecutor of the Domestic International Crimes Tribunal, a new warrant has now been issued for Hasina and 11 of her aides, which includes her former military advisor, military personnel, and several law enforcement officials under her tenure. Prosecutors said in the petitions that Hasina and her close aides and security agencies were responsible for killing the protesters and others during the violent demonstrations that took place in the summer of 2024. Before we move any further, what does it mean for India-Bangladesh relationship and how does this all add up? Let's first get in this quick update from my colleague Vishal Vivek, who puts things in perspective into what really are the details of this arrest warrant.
4 to 5 months, and as far as the case is concerned, it seems pretty watertight because it's been about 15 to 16 years ever since the reports of disappearances came up. And as far as the reports are concerned, in the last 14 to 15 years, almost 700 people have been, reportedly disappeared by the Hasina government. There were also many cases of extrajudicial killings. some 900 people have reportedly been killed due to extrajudicial killings. When Hasina was in power, she ruled with an iron fist for a while, and she actually started off in a pretty mellow manner, and then she sort of metamorphosed into a very iron-fisted ruler that resulted in these disappearances and these reported extrajudicial killings. So as far as the case itself is concerned, this is the second arrest warrant against Hasina. The first one was for crimes against humanity, and this one is, as you mentioned, for enforced disappearances, which number above 500 as far as this thing is concerned. So all of that will come into play. Whether or not Hasina will be produced before a court, that is the biggest question that will be answered by both the parties involved, and as the chances of that happening seems pretty dim at the moment.
All right, that was Vishal putting things in perspective. But what are the, let's now take a look at the big questions that we are now focusing on in this discussion. Before I get our guest viewers, let me now take you through the big questions that we'll be asking. First is, should New Delhi give up Sheikh Hasina? She's been here since the 5th of August violent protest that took place. She's taken asylum, refuge here really. And what are New Delhi's options as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned? That's question number one. The second question that we are asking is, are Dhaka-Delhi ties only about Sheikh Hasina? There's so much more to the India-Bangladesh relationship. Why is it that Dhaka under the present Yunus government is only focusing on Sheikh Hasina? And the third other question that we are asking is, can Bangladesh afford to alienate India? The Bangladeshi army chief and several other officials in the last couple of days have said that, we have a relationship with India. There are several things on which we rely on. Remember, a lot of, in fact, patients come from Bangladesh to India. And apart from that, a whole host of things, rice. So can they really afford to alienate New Delhi and keep harping on the Hasina factor again and again? And will Hasina actually get a fair trial in Dhaka? That's the big question. They've been coming out with arrest warrants. They've been talking again and again about wanting to get Sheikh Hasina. But is she really going to get a fair trial in Bangladesh under an unelected government, which was supposed to be interim and for a short period of time? Let's put that out now to the guests joining me this evening, Manju Seth as well as Salim Samad. Thank you so much for joining me on India Global. And Mr. Samad, let me start with you. Let me give you the opening remarks on this discussion, and let's try and be civil, cordial, and also factual and objective. Mr. Samad, my question to you is the India-Bangladesh relationship about Sheikh Hasina and only about Sheikh Hasina?
Thank you for having me on the show. I am really tired of answering these questions for the last 4 months. I mean, that's the Indian media was asking me the same question. And my answer is obviously the same. Yes, Hasina, Delhi has not yet officially have stated what is the status of Sheikh Hasina in India. She has not sought an asylum. She is there as a guest. So obviously there are a lot of loopholes or a lot of words that is missing, which links together. So, and officially, Bangladesh has not only sought extradition, but it is equally true that the chief advisor, Dr. Yunus, as well as the foreign advisor, and of course the military chief, all have mentioned clearly that Bangladesh cannot say no to the relationship with India, number one. Number two is the trade and commerce and other connectivity has to be continued. But unfortunately, one of the reasons that has really made a lot of Al Jazeera day before yesterday made a big story, and also I saw in the Indian media.
Sir, I don't care about Al Jazeera. I don't quote Al Jazeera. I don't read Al Jazeera. I don't care about it.
I also don't quote NDTV, so that's not an issue. First of all, you have to understand that the visa regime has been blocked or stalled or has been banned by India. So India is not giving any visa for the last since 5th August. So that's one of the reasons there is a contention, there is a tension among those who are seeking visa, and obviously those who are going for health checkup and other issues, education, and many business purpose. All of them has been blocked. So that is one reason there is a tension, and obviously India has to say something that when is this visa is going to resume. That's it. Bangladesh
No,
has
you
not
want
stopped
visas,
giving visa to the
you
Indian
want
nationals.
rice,
But
you want access to hospitals. There is a lot of things that Bangladesh needs from India, but all one keeps hearing is Hasina, 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 and some very provocative posturing as well. I take your point, sir. I'm going to give you enough time to respond to all of those questions. Let's take a quick opening comment from Manju Seth as well, which is the first question I asked, that what about New Delhi's options when it comes to Sheikh Hasina? And is she really going to get a fair trial, given what's happening in Bangladesh right now, Ms. Seth?
I think the options for India are there, and we can, very much, because she has been a trusted friend all these years, and we've had a very good relationship with her government. But as I feel that also with all other governments, whoever has been in power, Delhi and Bangladesh have had good, by and large, good relationship. It's never been the way it has descended at this particular time, with the interim government. And I think, when and as you very rightly said, there are other issues which should have been sort of addressed at the same time, but they are only talking about Sheikh Hasina, arrest warrant, and India, and as if the India-Bangladesh ties are only about Sheikh Hasina. They're not only about Sheikh Hasina, absolutely not. They're very wide-ranging, and we've had a good relationship always, but I think the interim government seems to be focusing only on one aspect. And when our foreign secretary went to Bangladesh recently, they did speak about general bilateral relations. It was conveyed to them our concerns about the minorities, our concerns about the way where we are headed. The way the relationship has come to a sort of there's been quite a break in the relationship in some ways. Many of the exchanges that used to take place have been put on hold, and I think they need to understand that both. For us also, Bangladesh is important. For Bangladesh, India is important, and I think making this particular, issue the only factor in the relationship, I think is not leading us. It's not going to take us anywhere, and it's not good for the relationship at all, I feel.
Mr. Samaj, respond to that. It's not good for a relationship, especially when governments are trying to repair some of the damage that has been done in the last couple of months, when the student protests led to a lot of attacks on Hindu minorities that continues even now, and a lot of rhetoric and posturing that was very anti-India. In the backdrop of that, if governments want to pick up the pieces, move ahead, try and rebuild some of that, something that our Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said when he was in Dhaka, how should Bangladesh be responding to those overtures?
first of all, Delhi, the South Bloc possibly has forgotten what Chanakya has mentioned about having a relationship with the region. If Delhi has kept all the eggs in one basket for the last 15 years, what else do you expect? So they have left it with Hasina, and Hasina has left. So all the eggs have been damaged. So now you have nothing else to discuss. So, of course, and one thing is very important, that the relationship has to be bilateral, have to be on both sides. Bangladesh is issuing visa, India is not issuing visa. The trade and commerce has reduced to less than 30%. So that has also been. The transportation, the communication has also been stalled. Nothing is moving. The trains are not moving. The buses are not moving.
Who's responsible
Most of the
for
flights
that,
have been cancelled. So that has also to be done. So
right.
it is not only
Who's
Bangladesh
responsible
has to do.
for that,
it has
sir?
to be both the countries, Delhi and Dhaka, has to agree to some of the to normalize the relationship.
Exactly. I was going to ask you, how does one go about normalizing relationship? The fact that trade and commerce has dipped so drastically, the fact that normal commute and transportation has taken a hit, in the backdrop of commentary, there are parts of UNIS government, there are sections of them which are going about issuing maps. There are some of them which are saying India did not do anything in the 1971 Liberation War, where 11,000 Indian soldiers laid down their lives. Now, in the backdrop of that, how do you think we can revive trade and commerce? How can we revive the economic ties between the two countries?
Regarding 1971, I mean, you must have know very well that in 1971, the 16th of December, the Bangladesh Mukti Bahini officers had visited India. They went in Calcutta. They were and of course the Indian officers who had fought in the war, especially on the eastern side, but northeast Indian side. So they were also in Dhaka. So there is nothing to do with 1971. The victory parade has been there, and of course it was also in Kolkata and other places. So this has nothing. 1971 has not been erased.
Mr. Samad, then why has the judges' training been cancelled? The fact that every year India and very regularly MOUs were signed between the two sides where training takes place. India does undertake the expenses also of training of senior judicial resources for Bangladesh. Why has that been cancelled?
But the judiciary, I read in the newspaper that they are supposed to be in India for a training. So I'm not sure that whether they have gone.
Okay.
Or they are still
it's been cancelled
to go to India.
Okay.
But this has not stopped. Again, one thing has to be understood. The visa regime is totally stopped. The visa section in Dhaka and other places is totally blocked.
Okay, let's now
the gates are blocked.
Fair enough. Let's now give Manju Seth a chance to rebut some of what you've said. Yes, ma'am, you've been wanting to come in.
No, because if you look at what is happening right now, I don't think the visa section is, issuing normal visas, from what I know. But yes, whenever required, I think they are still responding to special requests. I think. I'm not sure. I don't have any, inside information. But normally that is the case when there is some emergency. We do respond, even if the normal visas are sort of have been discontinued, and visa services. And also what Mr. Samad is saying, don't talk of 1971, but I think a lot of people and a lot of comments came in after Sheikh Hasina coming to India that 1971, India had no role. It was the Pakistanis. And now also they're saying it's because of Pakistan that everything is good and we should go back to Pakistan. We should retie. I'm not saying they shouldn't have good ties with Pakistan, but to say that India was not responsible. There were some statements issued saying India was not responsible for helping out Bangladesh get its independence. There's complete kind of negation of that actual of this fact. And I think the Bangladeshis, most of them do understand India's role, but I think when I was posted in Dhaka, also I remember that there was some who denied any India's positive role, and they said that it is the Pakistanis who were with us, and it was India who was attacking us. And I also had read in some of their texts at that time. Yes, it was there. You are laughing now, but it was there.
Propaganda machinery working overtime. Right. I'm afraid I have to end this here. Completely out of time. I'm going to revisit this and I'm going to give both of you a chance to rebut. And I'm sure as things are unraveling right now, we may have more to discuss. Hopefully better things than what the way relationship is going. Thank you so much, Manju Seth and Salim Samad. The bottom line, as far as this issue is concerned, is that the Muhammad Yunus government needs to understand that the history of India's long relationship with Sheikh Hasina is based on the shared sacrifices of India and Sheikh Hasina's father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, which birthed Bangladesh. Coercing India to give up Hasina will only strain ties. India sheltered Dalai Lama after he fled Tibet in 1959 and continues to do so. Yunus's unelected government should not limit the relationship to just Sheikh Hasina and must instead work on other aspects to revive the relationship, which includes trade, commerce and people-to-people ties. All right, on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back with lots more stories on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching India Global. We turn our attention now, to Europe and what the world's richest man is doing there. Elon Musk has sparked a political storm in the UK by launching a series of controversial posts targeting Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Labour government. His comments have reopened discussions around the issue of child rape gangs, sparking calls for fresh probe. In a series of posts on X, Musk demanded a new national public inquiry, called for Labour government to face an immediate election and wanted King Charles to dismiss the government. And a stunning turn of events took place where Elon Musk also pulled the support for Nigel Farage, calling for the Reform UK leader to step down. Remember, there's so much that has happened in the UK politics, one may say never a dull moment. And the post followed Farage's praise just hours earlier, where he called Musk a friend who made reform look cooler. Amidst all of this, UK PM Keir Starmer has also finally spoken. Let's first listen into what he said. We come back and talk more about where does UK politics go from here and what does this mean for the United Kingdom.
Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson, not interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case, a gang grooming case.
All right, let's get in. Professor Scott Lucas, founder of EA Worldview, Emeritus Professor of International Politics, University of Birmingham, joining me live to talk more about where does UK politics go from here. Professor Scott, never a dull moment, at least that's what it's looking like right now. But how do you see this present situation? The UK, I would call them rape gangs. I'm sorry, I can't bring myself to call them grooming gangs. That's not a new thing that has been going on for a decade. Some inquiries have happened. A lot of people felt that the victims didn't get justice, but that issue has now been brought back into UK politics. How do you see that impacting a government which many thought was stable, but doesn't look so right now?
Well, let me give your viewers, and thank you for the opportunity, the bottom line here, because it applies not only to the UK, it could apply to the US, it could apply to India. Elon Musk, who is not a citizen of Britain, is trying to overthrow the British government. His words, not mine. He just had a poll on whether America should liberate the British people from tyranny. He has done this through misinformation and disinformation. He has done it through what could be libelous tweets, including against a Labour minister who actually has done more to safeguard women and girls than almost anybody else in the past decade. And he has done it by supporting a far-right figure who has been prosecuted for inciting racial and religious hatred, Tommy Robinson. You identify the fundamental issue, and we need to identify that quite clearly. These rape gangs, and you use the right terminology, and they're rape gangs preying on sometimes teenage women, on children. This issue has not been covered up. In 2022, the independent inquiry, the J inquiry, issued 20 recommendations. But the question here is not that there has not been an inquiry, which is what Musk says. It is that those recommendations need to be implemented, whether it's getting a database on children,
Indeed,
whether it's to make sure that those who are, etc. We could go through all the measures that have been taken. Musk doesn't care about that, or he doesn't know. What he is trying to do is to use that issue to attack the government and to put his own person in power.
This is not about Tommy Robinson. This is not about Nigel Farage specifically, but this is about Keir Starmer. There have been a lot of claims about his role when he was the prosecutor about a decade ago, something that has been brought into public limelight right now. My question is that at a time when the Prime Minister had a historic mandate like last year, 6 months later, it seems that his ratings have plummeted to record lows. How do you see that causing, or do you see that causing a shift in UK political landscape?
Well, Starmer's ratings have dropped in part because of social media and the fact that the UK, where I lived for almost 40 years, is a divided country. But they have dropped not because Keir Starmer covered up a rape scandal. They've dropped because there are serious economic issues in the United Kingdom, because there are serious social issues in the UK, and because Labour, who are in power, they now have the responsibility of dealing with this. So we need to separate the very real issues that are there in the UK, housing, transport, health, and education, from the white noise of what Musk is doing. To deal with your specific claim, Keir Starmer was the head of the UK's prosecution service. He was the chief Crown prosecutor. He prosecuted a series of rapists when he was there. Now, there were certain cases which were not prosecuted immediately because more evidence needed to be gathered. There were problems because communities were covering up the crimes. That was there. But to say that Starmer covered this up, that's one of the libels that's being put out there. But the problem is on social media, you're not held accountable for what you say. And Elon Musk, of course, owns an entire social media platform where he can spread these lies without responsibility.
All right, Professor Scott, thanks much for speaking to me on NDTV. Let's see where this goes from here. My sense is it isn't ending anytime soon. Really appreciate you taking out the time. All right, well, viewers, as far as bottom line of this issue is concerned, UK is a nation on the cusp of, well, some would say becoming a has-been power. And thanks to Musk's revelation, what many thought was clandestine Pakistani rape gangs are no longer a hidden secret in Westminster's power corridors. UK's moral high ground, once so vocal in preaching to nations like India about rape, is now crumbling under the weight of its own hypocrisy. Downing Street finds itself caught in its own web where silence and denial hopefully will not be options anymore. All right, shifting focus now to HMPV, or the Human Metapneumovirus, a respiratory virus recently causing concern in China, has begun to draw attention in India after the first potential case was reported in Bengaluru. This virus, which primarily affects the upper and lower respiratory tracts, is particularly concerning for vulnerable groups, that is young children, the elderly and individuals with weakened immune systems. First identified in 2001, the HMPV is not new but remains underdiagnosed. 2 cases of that virus are now being reported in Bengaluru today. A 3-month-old baby who was being discharged and an 8-month-old who is recovering at a hospital in Karnataka. This marks the first reported cases of HMPV in India, and the infected infants and their families have no recent travel history, ruling out exposure from other parts of the world. All right. In fact, the HMPV fear, in fact, also gripped the markets, where one saw bloodbath in the Indian markets. The Sensex and Nifty both tanked, and they were down about 1.5% each. On Monday, Nifty 50 was down about 388 points, but it was the Sensex which was down over 1,200 points, led by many fearing that this may be the start of something bigger. So far, let me tell our viewers, there's been not a word from the government in terms of the possibility of this virus spreading at all. But well, markets have a life of their own, a mind of their own, and this is how they reacted to those 2 cases. All right, on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global with me. Thanks so much for watching.